Welcome to the Strength for Life podcast, where smart strength training meets real life. We're Dr. Matt and Nicole Klingler, founders of Village Fitness and Physical Therapy. Here, you'll learn what really works in the gym, at home, and for life.
Welcome back to the Strength for Life podcast. I'm Nicole Klingler, and today I'm going to talk to you about my favorite exercise of all time, pull-ups. And we're going to get into why I think that every woman can learn to do a pull-up. And the reason for that is that pull-ups are something that is a very powerful exercise that I think that every woman should be able to do and can do, but they're not easy. And they're something that a lot of people will say things like, I don't think I'll ever be able to do a pull-up, or I've never been able to do one. I don't think I ever will. And I'm here to tell you that you are stronger than you think you are. And most of the women that I work with already have way more strength than they give themselves credit for. And what they're usually missing isn't the ability, it's confidence, consistency, and a clear path on what to do in order to be able to do a pull-up. And quite honestly, it'll be harder for women to do pull-ups than men. And those differences come from muscle mass, leverage, body composition, where we store fat and muscle. And even though it's harder, it doesn't mean that it's impossible. And beyond the empowerment piece of women just being able to say that, I can do a pull-up, like it's a very empowering movement and something that, is very rewarding once you can do it. Pull-ups are also one of the best movements you can do for just strengthen your body. They help with shoulder health and function. They're a serious upper body and core strengthening exercise that you can do. A lot of people think like I have to do crunches, but really I think you'll get way more core activation if you're practicing pull-ups and including those in your strength training routine. And they also give you confidence that carries over into so many other areas of life. Like if you can do a pull-up as a woman, you can do anything. I say the same thing about childbirth. Like if you have pushed a baby out, then you can do a pull-up. You just need to train for it. And it's something that, is possible. You might need to reframe how long you think it's going to take you. So, and I think that one thing that will help a lot of women with the pull-up expectation is that pull-ups are a body weight skill. So that means you're pulling your entire body weight against gravity. And so body weight does play a role in pull-ups, and it's not a judgment, it's just physics. So just like someone who, starts doing squats, like they don't expect to squat, say 150 pounds, say they weigh 150 pounds immediately. Like that's something they're going to work up to for months, maybe even years. And it's the same thing with pull-ups. Like you're pulling your body weight against gravity. So if two people have the same strength, but one person weighs less, the lighter person will generally have an easier time doing pull-ups. And it doesn't make them more disciplined or more athletic. It just means that the load that they're moving is smaller. And it actually works both ways. So there's plenty of movements in sports where being heavier or taller is actually an advantage. So things like powerlifting or throwing sports or even ski erg and rowing in the gym, mass and leverage can actually be beneficial and make it easier for you to do that movement. So that being said, if pull-ups feel especially hard for you, that doesn't mean that you're failing or you'll never be able to do it. It just means that your body has a different relationship with gravity, and that can affect the timeline, not the possibility of you being able to do a pull-up. So progress is still absolutely on the table. It just might be a different timeline. So before we get into the how to train for your first pull-up, I want you to just have this habit of, what can I do to actually measure the ability to do a pull-up? And that is to set a reminder on your phone. So I want you to pause right now if you can and set a reminder on your phone to test your pull-ups once a month. So ideally, it's the same day of the week and it's at the beginning of the workout and you film yourself doing that. And the reason for that is that we often forget that we are making progress because we don't measure our progress. And it's really hard with pull-ups because for a lot of people, it's like you either can or you can't. But if you actually watch a video of yourself, like you actually might be able to get up a little bit higher than you were before. You actually can control the lower better. You might look more stable, or you might be able to have your feet closer together. So there's a lot of ways that you can compare your progress from attempting to do a pull-up or a chin-up once to the next month when you attempt to do it again. So video it and set a reminder in your phone to test pull-ups once a month, because if you're not measuring your progress, like you're probably not going to progress at all. So after you have that reminder set, That'll help you stay consistent and motivated, especially when things are feeling slow or like you aren't progressing. And I think that you'll start to see a lot more change than you realize is happening in the day to day. It's the same thing like with our kids when they're growing up. It's you don't notice the changes until you look back at pictures and videos from a few months ago or 6 months ago, and you're like, oh wow, like they've changed a ton, but you just don't see it because you're in the everyday. So, some tips for getting started with your first pull up is to first know that consistency is key. And I think this is the area that why women aren't able to do a pull up or they're not able to progress as quickly as they want is because they're not doing pull ups 3 days a week. And that would be the minimum dose that I would say in order to be able to actually work up to being able to do a pull up. And that's challenging because in our small group training program, like the most we do pull ups usually is twice a week. That's when we're testing. And I often tell people that are really close, like, if you really want to make progress, especially in like a 12-week period, it really has to be 3 times a week. And you'll notice progress. Like, will you see progress if you do it twice a week or even once a week? Yes, but it's just going to be so much slower. It's the same thing with push ups, like anything where you just need more volume, which is things like push ups and pull ups and lunges, those things. It's like you just have to do it more often in order to actually see true progress. And so 3 days a week of consistently doing pull ups is going to be the main thing that you need to successfully be able to do your first pull up. The second thing is eccentrics are where you build strength. So this is huge. You don't need to be able to pull yourself up yet to get stronger. And really anyone can do an eccentric, especially once they can do a bar hang, which we're going to get into in a moment of like, that's kind of the first phase of building the foundation of being able to do a pull up. So you can do the eccentric before you can do the concentric. And that's where a lot of the strength gains happen. So that's on the lowering portion of the pull up. And a lot of times, like you could even get your box high enough to where your eyes are level with the bar and then you're lowering down slowly. That's the eccentric portion. Obviously, some people are not even there yet. Like they need to build up their grip strength first. And that's my third tip in starting pull-ups is grip strength is so important. You can't ignore it with pull-ups because that's often the limiting factor for why people can't do a pull-up is their grip strength just isn't where it needs to be. So if your, grip gives out, your pull-up is done. And so exercises like deadlifts, farmer's carries, bar hangs are all going to help support your ability to hang and pull yourself up. And if you neglect this or that's not a part of your training, like it's going to be really hard to progress in pull-ups. So let's keep these 3 things in mind as we go through the rest of this podcast. And no matter what level you're on, every pull-up follows the same basic setup. And this part matters more than most people realize. And it's honestly the same thing with all exercises, strength training exercises. Like if you have steps and you follow those same steps, it's going to help you to be a lot more precise with your form. It's going to help you to make sure that you're not doing anything that you're skipping steps that could make you more likely to get injured. It just helps set you up for success so that when you go to do your pull up, then okay, my form is good. And so pull ups, fortunately, are not as hard, or they're a little bit easier to keep the form on as long as you follow these steps. So the first is to set your grip. Generally speaking, you want your hands about shoulder width apart. Some people go a little bit closer, a little bit wider, depending on if they've had shoulder injuries or just how their body is built. But in general, you want to be about shoulder width apart, and you want to always start with your elbows straight and have a full grip on the bar. I see people that do their thumb on top of the bar. However, I think that you're stronger if you wrap your thumb around the bar and you have a good, strong grip. The second is to set your feet, and this is based on your current difficulty level. So if you're on the ground doing, TRX pull-ups, your feet can be a little bit wider and further from the wall as you challenge yourself a little bit more, they get closer to the wall. Also, when you're doing banded pull-ups, you can start with your feet a little bit wider and then they get a little bit closer together as you progress and get a little bit stronger. So set your grip, set your feet. The third is set tension. And I think this is the most important thing in pretty much any strength training exercise is to feel yourself brace and you lift your chest. So you're going to lift your chest, brace your core, and really just create that nice, strong, rigid plank that you need to be in when you're doing, a pull-up. And so that will just help your body to be prepared for that maximal, lift that you're going to be doing when you do the pull-up. And then when you actually do your pull up, you don't want to lead with your chin, which most people do. And I see is like a common thing. And they're trying to kind of use like the accessory muscles, but you actually want to lead with your chest which is why when you set your tension, your chest is lifted, and you want your elbows to come down straight by your sides. You want your wrist to stay neutral, and then you want to control the lower. That's that eccentric portion that we already talked about. And a lot of people will rush this, and that's why their pull-ups feel awkward or painful, or they feel like they're not set up correctly because they're not following these steps every single time they set up for a pull-up. Now we're going to get into the different levels of being able to do a pull-up. So the first level would be building your foundation. And this is where most women should start. If you've been strength training and you've been doing pull-ups, you might be able to skip this first level. But I would say that even if you've done pull-ups in the past, or maybe you've done strength training, like this is still a good place to start. There's no shame in starting at level 1, because this is just going to help you with your core strength and your grip strength, and you're going to see progress even if you only do this for a couple of weeks. So in this phase where you're building your foundation for pull-ups, you're going to do 2 exercises. And again, these need to be done at least 3 days a week, and consistency is going to be the biggest driver of progress here. So for your bar hangs, you're going to do 3 sets of 15 to 30 seconds. And ideally, you want to start with both feet off of the box. And then over time, if you need to, say you make it 10 seconds and you need to put 1 foot gently on the box, you can do that, or 2 feet. But you want to work towards doing a full 30 seconds. And then also in a hollow body hang, which means that you're posteriorly tilting your pelvis, you're engaging your core, and your legs are squeezed together. So that would be the ideal, and kind of how you know you've mastered the bar hang is if you can do a true hollow body hang for 30 seconds and you're not just kind of like holding on for dear life. Like you feel like your grip is strong enough to support your body weight for a full 30 seconds. So when you do these 3 sets of 15 to 30 seconds, you want to rest about a minute in between. And you can do things like, village curls, or some people kind of stretch, or they take deep breaths, or do some mobility in between. But you want to make sure you give your body enough time to rest in between the bar hangs before you go into the next one, so you're not too fatigued. And again, your goal here is to be able to do a full 30-second hollow body hang with your feet completely off the floor or a box. You can't be touching anything, like you have to truly be hanging. The second exercise in this first level is inverted rows. And so you want to do 5 sets of 5 eccentric reps, again, with about 30 to 60 seconds of rest in between sets. And your feet should be low enough that the last rep feels hard, but you can still maintain good form. And so the eccentric means that you count to 5 on the way down as you lower, and you should have, a 5 solid reps. Like if you can only pull yourself halfway up, like your feet are probably a little too low on this. And the inverted rows can be done on a TRX. They can be done on rings. They can be done on a bar, really anything where you can get your body inverted and you can pull yourself up. That's going to allow you to do an inverted row. So there's lots of variations you can do with this. You could do it at the park if you don't have access to a bar at home. But again, you want to do 5 sets of 5 eccentric reps. So how do you know if you're ready for level 2? You're ready to move on when you can do a 30-second hollow body hang without your feet touching the floor or a box. And then you can also complete 1 strong set of 5 inverted rows with your feet close to the wall, or, as close to the wall as possible. And this phase might take 4 weeks. It might take 3 months. It might take 6 months. It really just depends on where you're starting. And, your strength training, your body weight, your consistency, they all are going to play a role here. So don't be discouraged by, staying at level 1 for a longer period of time. It is going to be a slow, long road for a lot of people. And so how do you know if you're ready to move from level 1 to level 2? So 1, you're definitely going to test your pull up or your chin up again and film it and see if you notice any of the differences that I mentioned. Like maybe you are able to hang a little bit better. You're able to pull yourself up just a little bit more. You just look more stable. The next thing is that after you test it and you are able to do those things, is that you're going to move to level 2. And level 2 is your assisted strength. This is often when your progress will start to slow down even a little bit more. So I want to normalize that. This one, a lot of people will be here anywhere from like 6 weeks to sometimes closer to a year. However, if you're doing this 3 times a week and you really are consistent at this level, like it might be a little bit faster. And so this is where you're transitioning from assisted strength to like a true body weight strength. And really that takes a lot of time. And your timeline, again, will depend on your body weight, your strength base, how your shoulders and your grip tolerate the volume. Sometimes people need to like slowly build up to this. And level 2 includes two main exercises. The first one is chin up holds. So ideally you're doing these again, everything is at least 3 days a week, and you're going to do 5 sets of 5 to 10-second holds at the top. If you need to build up to that, it could start with 1 or 2 seconds, but your goal is to be able to hold that chin up or that pull up position, if you end up moving to that. But I would say start with the chin up position where you go, say you put a box next to your bar, you get up to that point where you can hold yourself in that chin up or that pull up position at the top. And you want to build up to being able to do 10 seconds where your feet aren't touching the ground. To make it even more challenging, you could even start to lower a little bit and then hold in that lowered position. And that can actually challenge you even a little bit more if you feel like you're still not quite where you need to be. And again, you want to go for 5 sets of 5 to 10-second holds. And your goal is to be able to do a 10-second hold for at least one set. And then again, just like the bar hangs, you want to probably rest anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds in between those chin up holds. The second exercise you're going to do is a banded pull up. So on this one, on the chin up holds, ideally you're doing chin up grip. And then for the banded pull ups, I actually want you to flip your grip around unless you have shoulder issues. And this should also be done 3 days a week. And just like our rows, we are doing 5 sets of 5 eccentric banded pull ups. So you're going to pull yourself up on a 1 count and lower on a 5 count. We recommend that people start with no more than 2 bands and then work down to doing it with 1 band. And the reason for that is that it really is probably too much assistance. Like if you need 3 bands, like you're probably not quite ready for banded pull-ups yet. And you probably need to go back to doing the TRX rows. And the reason for that is because you just can't support enough of your body weight yet. And it's probably not as safe as doing it with just 2 bands and then down to 1 band. So start with 2 bands, and then ideally, right, the bands get smaller, and then you go to doing 1 band. And your goal should be able to do 1 set of 5 reps with a small blue band, which they're pretty universal. We use Rogue bands, but that's about 30 pounds of assistance. And when you can do that, when you can do 5 reps, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be eccentric at that point. If you can just do 5 reps of pull-ups with a blue band, then you should be ready to move on to level 3, which is actually being able to do a pull-up. And another note on this is that if you're like, okay, I want to try again, and maybe say you're closer to doing a chin up and you still are doing banded pull-ups with 1 or 2 thin bands, you might be okay to jump to level 3. Again, it probably just depends on your body type, how your body's responded to the training so far, and how long and consistently you've been doing pull-ups. Personally, I worked up to doing 10 full chin-ups before I started doing pull-ups. And that was just because I felt like that was more achievable. And so I was doing banded pull-ups and I was doing the chin-up holds. But then when I actually attempted to do a pull-up, I actually just started with chin-ups and worked up to doing 10. So again, it's totally up to you. If you're like, it's really important that I do a pull-up. But some people actually do better off when they testing with chin-ups and being able to do that first. And then we're going to move on to level 3, which is just owning the movement and being able to actually do a pull-up. So in this last phase of training, it includes, again, 2 exercises. And those 2 exercises are eccentric pull-ups and scapular pull-ups. So now we've switched. Again, if you need to have that chin-up grip for whatever reason, feel free to do that. But the eccentric pull-ups, you want to train these 3 days a week. And just like with a band, you're doing 5 sets of 5, and you're going to do a 5-second controlled lower. And this can feel really hard at first. And so I would say try it. If you can't quite do all 5 sets to start, maybe start with 2 or 3 sets and then work your way up to doing all 5 sets. And what you do is you start from a high box and you basically just make yourself level where your eyes are just right above the bar. Or you could start with a lower box if you don't have access to a higher box and just kind of jump up a little bit, but make sure you gain that control in your core before you start to lower so you're not swinging all over the place. And your goal should be you can do 1 set of 5 very controlled eccentric pull-ups with a true 5-second lower. So what I often see when people start doing eccentric pull-ups is that they're okay for the first couple seconds and then they kind of drop the rest of the way because their body hasn't built up enough strength to be able to fully control that lower in the eccentric portion. And so that's okay. Like you can start there and over time you'll be able to do, a full set of 5 eccentric pull-ups. The other exercise you're going to do during this phase is scapular pull-ups. So this is where you're in that bottom hang position. And again, you're also going to do this 3 days a week. You're going to do 5 sets of 5 reps with a 2-second hold and fully relax. So essentially, you're just lifting your chest, pulling your scapula down, and then you're going to relax. It's almost like you're lifting your chest, trying to create that tension like you would when you're setting up for a pull-up. You hold it for 2 seconds and then you relax. And you do that 5 times, ideally without taking a break with your grip. But if you need to at this point, like you can take breaks in between those reps. And the goal would be able to do this for a full 10 seconds. So you're going to do 5 sets of 5 reps with a 2-second hold. However, to know that you are good to try a pull up or a chin up again would be you can actually do a full 10-second scapular hold and maintain your body in that position for 10 seconds. So after about 12 weeks of consistent work here, you should be able to do a full pull up or a chin up if that's what you've been practicing. If you haven't, don't be discouraged. Keep testing once a month, filming your progress. And I would say test at least every 4 weeks to know, if you're getting closer to being able to do a full pull-up. Couple of final thoughts. Pull-ups are not about your genetics, and that can play a role into it. But I think that they're more about patience, consistency, and respecting where your body is right now, and not feeling frustrated if the timeline is maybe different from someone else's, or if you feel like you've kind of stalled. Like that's part of strength training and just training in general, is that there's going to be highs and lows. Like you're not always going to just be able to go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 in the same amount of time. And there's a lot of life that gets in the way. And so there's things like, people travel, or they don't sleep as well, or they have little tweaks and injuries. And, over time, the thing that's going to get you the most progress is just consistency. And if you only do it twice in 1 week, like that's okay. It's not going to be the end of the world. But I think just if you really want to be able to do a pull up, like you need to commit to it and say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to commit to this for at least 12 weeks. And then, if you don't quite get there, depending on where you started, then give it another 12 weeks. And I think when you finally get your first pull up, you'll never forget it. It's very empowering and it's worth the effort that you put in. So hope this helps with your pull-up journey, and that you're encouraged that you can do it. And I've seen so many women that have been successful in this. I've seen lots of clients who have done this. And then I've also seen a lot of clients who are frustrated by not being able to do it yet. And what I often tell them is like, you can do it, just not yet. And there's this children's book that I read to my kids all the time. And I love that it says like it basically in the story, it says like, just because you can't do it doesn't mean, you won't ever be able to do it. It just means you can't yet do it, like not yet. And so it's the magical yet. And so I encourage you to believe in yourself, believe in the magical yet that you can do it. It's just going to take time, consistency, and not giving up if you don't see progress right away. So until next time, this is the Strength for Life podcast, and I'm Nicole Klingler, and thanks for listening.